Hello, everybody, and welcome to the ABA section of Environment, Energy, and Resources Annual Awards. We're so excited to have you all on today with our honorees, and I know you're all still joining, but I'm going to go ahead and get the festivities started for us. It is my pleasure as the current chair of the section to introduce Howard Kennison. Howard is our past chair, and Howard is a shareholder at the law firm of Jones & Keller in Denver, Colorado. He's a former Colorado Deputy Attorney General and nationally recognized in environmental law and litigation. All of these awards were decided, not nominated, decided, debated, and approved under Howard's guiding hand and tenure. And so it is only appropriate that Howard be our opening MC this evening, or this afternoon, depending on what coast you are in America. Thank you. Over to you, Howard.
Thank you, Michelle. And most importantly, a couple of comments. I'll be very, very brief. First, my congratulations to the winners of these awards, and my sincere thanks to all of you for the incredible work that you do on behalf of the environment, on behalf of the environmental, energy, and resources law. Some of you have been doing this longer than even I've been practicing law. So thank you and congratulations to each of you. Second, and equally important, is my sincere thanks to Shoshana Schiller, the chair of this year's, or last year's, excuse me, awards committee. Shoshana is a partner, a Manco Gold Catcher and Fox in Pennsylvania. She has been an active member of SEER for years and has really taken it to heart to lead the awards committee, actually for 2 years now. And despite the pandemic and COVID restrictions and working from home, the awards committee really did pull together an incredible group of awardees. And Shoshana, my sincere thanks to you for the great work you did this year and for a great group of awardees. I really wish that we could all be together like we normally would be at the fall conference, where we would be able to shake hands, talk, meet each other, and greet. Unfortunately, this past year not only affected everybody, but did lead to us doing this virtually. But it looks like we have a great group of people watching, and therefore thank all of you for joining us. And let me turn it over now to Shoshana, because I know we have a bunch of introductions and then speeches. And I think, who's playing the music to end the awards, you know, that lets them know that they're out of time. I think we have music somewhere, right? If not, Shoshana, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Howard. And to everybody, good evening or good afternoon. I'd like to add my welcome to everyone who's joined us. Last year was actually my first as co-chair, and I was co-chair with Sean Dixon of the Annual Awards Committee. And so I'd like to start by thanking the committee members who helped select this really incredible slate of awardees. They are, in addition to Sean, Robin Craig, Seth Davis, Pamela Esterman, Erin Flannery Keith, Bill Kinsey, James McDonald, and Nicholas Tark. In the past, I've always been incredibly impressed with the awardees, but seeing this committee in action and the deliberative process and the amazing nominees that we receive makes me appreciate our recipients even more. So onward, I'm going to announce each award recipient separately and then pass the virtual microphone to the presenter, who will give you more information about each awardee and why they were selected. The first award is the ABA Award for Excellence in Environmental, Energy, and Resources Stewardship. It recognizes and honors the accomplishments of a person, organization, or group that has distinguished itself in the environmental, energy, and resources stewardship. This year, the award is being given to the Wallace Stegner Center for Land, Resources, and the Environment, and is being presented by Robin Craig. Robin is a professor at the University of Southern California Gould School of Law and is a member of the ABA SEER Awards Committee.
Okay, thank you, Shoshana. I am pleased to be able to present this award for excellence in environment, energy, and resources stewardship to the Wallace Stegner Center for Land, Resources, and Environment at the University of Utah S.J. Quinney College of Law, my former home. The center's commitment to stewardship resonates through multiple of its program facets. So first, of course, it educates future environmental, natural resources, and energy law lawyers who go on to serve the public interest in a variety of capacities. Second, the center educates the general public and current lawyers through a wide variety of programs that it offers over the course of each academic year, culminating in its annual Wallace Stegner Symposium every spring. Third, the center's research program provides expert analysis on contemporary issues designed to inform law and policy. Two examples of its current projects, research projects, are exploring how federal agencies can more efficiently implement NEPA while simultaneously increasing public involvement and improving decision-making. Another research project that the Stegner Center is working on is looking at how tribes incorporate traditional knowledge and indigenous science into coping with climate change. And then finally, one of the unique aspects of the Stegner Center is that it hosts one of the very few environmental dispute resolution centers at US law schools. This environmental dispute resolution program provides aids and situational assessments to a variety of people in need of some help mediating environmental and resource issues, including, for example, the gateway communities that exist outside our national parks that are in need of making use of that amenity while still preserving their traditional character. So it is my great pleasure to introduce, accepting the award for the Stegner Center, my friend and former colleague, Bob Kiter. Bob Kiter is the Wallace Stegner Professor of Law and University Distinguished Professor at the University of Utah S.J. Quinney College of Law. His personal scholarship focuses on our national parks and other federal public lands, and I encourage you to read his books on that subject if you have not already. But more directly relevant to this award, Professor Kiter is the creator of the Wallace Stegner Center, its founding director, and has overseen its expansion over 3 decades. So Bob, pleasure to have you here, and congratulations.
Robin, thank you very much for that very warm introduction. We miss you here at Utah. We certainly hope you and Don are thriving in the Southern California area, and particularly next to the ocean. That's you beloved and have focused much of your career and work on. We also miss your contributions to the Stegner Center. So on behalf of the University of Utah S.J. Quinney College of Law and my Wallace Stegner Center colleagues, I'm truly honored to accept the SEER Award for Excellence in Environmental, Energy, and Resources Stewardship. Here is the award and the plaque. We will feature this prominently in the Stegner Center here at the College of Law. The award's a fitting and meaningful tribute to the work of my colleagues and their tireless efforts to promote constructive dialogue and creative approaches to the complex environmental and natural resource challenges confronting us today. For 27 years, since 1994, the Wallace Stegner Center has sought to embody and convey the ideals that our namesake promoted, as captured in his memorable statement. All of us have the obligation somehow to have some kind of concern for the species, for the culture, for the larger thing outside of ourselves. To do so, the Stegner Center has hosted 26 annual symposiums on topics ranging from public lands, climate change and energy, wildlife, the Colorado River, and the nuclear West, with the goal of advancing public knowledge and identifying solutions for these critical matters. Just yesterday, the center hosted its 17th annual Young Scholar Lecture, and regularly presents noon hour talks on pressing environmental issues. The center's research program, Robin mentioned this, has contributed to the NEPA reform debate, the history of national monuments, the tribal water conundrum faced by so many Native American tribes today, and the list goes on. The unique dispute resolution program has now trained dozens of officials, students, and others in the art of collaborative problem solving. It has been a true pleasure for me to watch these programs flourish and impact the real world. Let me express my personal thanks to my colleagues and our supporters. My colleague and friend Bob Adler has been by my side from the outset, contributing to the center in so many tangible and intangible ways. My associate director, Jan Nystrom, has likewise been a stalwart who flawlessly oversees the center's many activities and friends. The Stegner Center staff and research faculty, Michelle Strobe, John Ruppel, Danya Rumore, Heather Tanana, who's also being honored today, and Nedra Chandler have been the backbone of our activities and accomplishments. Throughout the years, my faculty colleagues have supported and contributed to the center and its programs. They include Bonnie Mitchell, Bill Lockhart, Susan Poulter, Nancy McLaughlin, Amy Wildermuth, Lincoln Davies, Arnold Wrightsey, Robin Craig, who introduced the award, Erica George, Leslie Francis, Tony Angie, Alex Skabeen, and Elisabeth Kronk Warner. Thank you all. And without our principal funders, the ESRR Endowment Fund, the Quinney Foundation, the Burton Foundation, Cultural Vision Fund, Chevron, and the Alternative Visions Fund, we could not have enjoyed the stability that has enabled the Stegner Center to thrive. I remain also indebted to Dave Livermore, Greg Thompson, and the late Lowell Durham, who helped me originally conceive the Stegner Center idea. Many Utah lawyers who work in the natural resource, energy, and environmental area have provided support to, most notably, Clay Parr, Jim Moore, the late Jim Holtkamp, and Bill Prince. And the center has been much enriched by our exceptional students here at the College of Law, both through their law school years and by their professional accomplishments since then. Finally, we are forever grateful to the Stegner family, Mary, Paige, Lynn, and Allison, who are willing to believe in the Wallace Stegner Center idea in the beginning and have continued to champion our efforts. Again, we thank the American Bar Association Steer Committee for this much appreciated recognition. Moving forward, the Stegner Center will continue striving to promote Wallace Stegner's vision for a better society, captured in his immortal words about the native home of hope. When the West fully learns that cooperation, not rugged individualism, is the pattern that most characterizes and preserves it, then it will have achieved itself and outlived its origins. Then it has a chance to create a society to match its scenery. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. We have two recipients this year for the ABA Award for Distinguished Achievement in Environmental Law and Policy, which recognizes individuals or organizations who have distinguished themselves in environmental law and policy, contributing significant leadership in improving the substance, process, or understanding of environmental protection and sustainable development. The first award is being given posthumously to Dean Suagee and is being accepted by his children, Jessica Suagee-Bedore and Jason Suagee. It is being presented by Jerry Straus. Jerry has worked in Washington, D.C., representing Indian tribes for more than 50 years and is a partner at Hobbs, Straus, Dean, and Walker.
Hello, everybody. I feel deeply privileged to be asked to introduce the award for Dean Suagee, who I had the unique privilege of working with for more than 30 years in my law firm. He joined Hobbs Straus in 1988 and remained with our firm until his death in 2019, specializing in various aspects of Indian environmental law and becoming one of the leading experts in that field. His passion and skill in that field is second to none. And it is clear that he is truly missed and richly deserves receipt of the ABA Award for Distinguished Achievement in Environmental Law and Policy. Dean worked over the years with many tribal officials around the country to create and help tribes to oversee environmental issues and cultural resource regulatory programs that had to function within the overall framework of federal and tribal law, and yet be fully consistent with the fundamental principles of tribal sovereignty. His passionate commitment to that work is second to none, and his enthusiasm about that work had a very positive effect on tribes on many reservations. Dean also played a unique role in helping tribes implement federal environmental protection laws and cultural resource laws, and an advocacy of tribal interests in the administration of these federal laws. He had a clear understanding of these technical and complex laws and was uniquely able to communicate that understanding to others with great effect. A prolific and frequently published writer, Dean wrote maybe more law review articles than anybody else I've ever heard of on environmental law issues and cultural protection laws, as well as renewable energy laws and the emerging international law on the rights of indigenous people. His articles were well received and had great positive effect on tribal and other decision makers. Dean was frequently featured as a speaker at tribal conferences and instructed tribal continuing education programs. An active member of the ABA, section on environmental energy and resources. He was chair of the Native American Resources Committee and a member of the editorial board of Natural Resources and Environment, an ABA quarterly journal. At this point, I would like to introduce his children who are going to receive the award on his behalf. Jessica Suagee Bedore has a PhD from Virginia Tech and is currently an assistant professor at Sam Houston State University in Texas. She will return to Virginia Tech this winter as an associate professor. Her field is equine nutrition, and her focus is on teaching undergraduates. Dean's son, Jason, has a PhD in math from George Washington University of Washington, D.C., and he currently works for the Nexus Research Company, where he is involved in developing mathematically verified privacy policies for the Census Bureau. Prior to Dean's passing, the passing of his wife, Karen, and their mother, Jason spent a great deal of time, and his family is very proud and grateful about this, helping them in their last days. And he made a big difference for his father that enabled his father to be able to work almost to the very end. And it never could have been done without Jason's help. So I'd like to salute Jason for that and mention it especially.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for those wonderful and kind words. When I received the email that my father had received this award, I was moved to tears. I had no idea it was coming, and I was so grateful to have another opportunity to celebrate his life's achievements. So thank you. Jason and I would like to take a moment to thank the committee for recognizing and celebrating the work that our father completed during his lifetime. It is truly an honor to have him selected from what I can imagine is a great number of people working in this field. All of us in my dad's family are very appreciative of this award and the opportunity for us to thank again about what he accomplished in his lifetime. And that being said, I'm sure if my dad was here, he would point out people who he was inspired by. He was a very humble man. So many of you are more familiar with my dad's work than I am, the tribes he worked with and his specific accomplishments. However, one of the things that has stood out through the many conversations I've had with his former colleagues has been his intellect and his capacity to put policy into eloquent stories. And that's what really set him apart. One thing that he really enjoyed was using American Indian traditional stories to weave an allegory for his policy arguments. And I think his ability to tell a story was probably unparalleled. So with that in mind, I did try to count. He managed to publish more than 70 articles in a variety of law review journals. And beyond publishing, his work was cited outside the bounds of law, reaching fields including archaeology and environmental science. And I even have friends who went to law school and graduate school who have cited his work and requested interviews for their thesis and dissertations. So he loved his work dearly, and I don't think he ever would have retired. I don't even think he considered it work. It was his life's mission, and he loved it so much. But if he were here today, I know that he'd want to thank some people. He was very gracious, and so he'd want to make sure that people understood how thankful he was for their help. So I think he would sincerely thank his colleagues at Hobbs, Straus, and Walker. He spent most of his career there, and they definitely supported him throughout that whole career and engaged his intellect. I don't know all of the people that he worked with, but he spoke frequently of Jerry and Karen Funk, Mariah, and Chris Stearns, and I'm sure there's many others, and I apologize for not knowing every single person, but he greatly appreciated all of you, and he spoke highly of everyone that he worked with. I think he would also thank the tribes that he worked with. He formed deep, lasting friendships with many of these people who also came to his memorial service. They hiked up a mountain with us to pay respects. And I know that he greatly appreciated those partnerships, and he would be very thankful for those people. He would also like to thank his family for inspiring and encouraging him. My grandmother, Ruth, gave him his love of the earth and environment, and his father, my grandfather, Jay, helped him develop his political and worldview. And so all of the energy that he had in his career came from these roots, and then developed through the partnerships that he formed. I think he would also like to thank brothers and sisters and Jason, of course, for supporting him and sacrificing time as he went about his life's goals. Family was often involved in his work, debating politics, reading drafts of articles. I'm fairly certain that law review articles substituted for bedtime stories when we were kids sometimes. So we've all been a part of it, offering perspectives, telling stories, listening to him express himself through music. And I think he'd also like to thank our mother, because she also made sacrifices to help him achieve his goals, and was very good at reminding him of book chapter deadlines. So I know he was very grateful to her. And so my guess is that he would end with asking everyone to keep up the good work, keep fighting the good fight, keep writing those scathing policy reviews and telling stories, and keep practicing with the highest of ethics and morals. So here's his award. Thank you so much. And so lastly, from his family, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for celebrating his work and giving us another chance to honor his life. And so Jason, if you have any words, feel free.
I did not know I was going to be saying something. Thank you. Thank you for honoring my dad with this award. I actually read maybe 2 of his law articles at one point. I didn't get everything in them because I'm not a legal scholar. One of them was called something about whack-a-mole game theory at the Supreme Court. And I really appreciated how he would just call out the Supreme Court's BS in just a really clever way. Yeah, I think you've said what I wanted to say, Jess. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you both. So the second recipient of the Distinguished Achievement in Environmental Law and Policy Award is going to Heather Tanana. Pam Esterman, a principal at Cy, Paget, and Rizel in New York, and a member of the ABA SEER Awards Committee, will present the award.
Thank you, Shoshana. It's great to be here today to celebrate all of the outstanding awardees. I am delighted to be able to present Professor Heather Tanana, who has been chosen to receive the award for Distinguished Achievement in Environmental Law and Policy. Heather is a steadfast advocate for environmental justice and rights of Indigenous peoples, including her own tribe, the Navajo Nation. The pandemic brought national attention to some of the challenges that tribal communities have been dealing with for decades, such as limited health services and lack of water access. Over the past year, much of Heather's work has focused on bringing national attention to the barriers faced by tribes to resources, including potable water. As part of her work with the Water and Tribe Initiative, Heather led research efforts on water access for tribes in the Colorado River Basin. Heather's work was the impetus for the introduction of a U.S. Senate and House resolution recognizing the human right to water and the federal government's responsibility to provide clean water access to Native Americans. Heather also chairs the board of the Urban Indian Center of Salt Lake and works with numerous other organizations in support of their tribal welfare efforts. Heather holds a law degree from the University of Utah, a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins, and an undergraduate degree from Dartmouth. Heather stayed very close to two of her alma maters and currently serves as an assistant research professor at the University of Utah's College of Law and an associate faculty member at the Johns Hopkins Center of American Indian Health. Heather is an active member of SEER, and she is on the Native American Resources Committee and has assisted in programming for the upcoming Tribal Rights Conference that will be held in January. It's now my pleasure to introduce and present the award for Distinguished Achievement in Environmental Law and Policy to Heather Tanana. Please join me in congratulating her.
Thank you, Pam. Yate everyone, Heather Tanana Yaneshe, Shemae Belagana Nilea Doshije Kiani. So as Pam mentioned, I'm a proud citizen of the Navajo Nation. And I knew I always get emotional about these things because the work that I do is so personal to me. I went into law school to help tribal communities, and the challenges that are faced are well known to those who are working in or from those communities. The lack of access to healthcare, the lack of critical infrastructure. These were all things that made COVID-19 so deadly to Native Americans, but they're not new. They've been crippling tribal communities for decades. And I have been so fortunate to have amazing role models in my life, individuals who have fought their entire lives to improve the health of Native Americans, to protect their civil liberties and human rights. And it was such a privilege for me to go on to my undergrad and graduate degrees to obtain an education and stand on the shoulders of those who went before me, and to lean on those that are still with me when I'm tired and gain their support. Because during the pandemic, I have needed that support. If you're a Native American in this country, you are not emerging unscathed from the pandemic. We have all lost someone that we love. We have all seen firsthand how the past federal policies and the current environment have failed Native Americans and led to so many unnecessary losses. And we're all tired. But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to address the environmental inequities in Indian country. And the work that my colleagues at the WTI and I have done to ensure clean drinking water access, it was needed and it was long overdue. As the pandemic showed, access to water, it's a matter of life and death. And yet Native American households are 19 times more likely to lack water access than white households. And so I am absolutely thrilled to receive this award today, but I definitely did not do it alone. The entire Water and Tribes Initiative team, particularly the research team they contributed, it would not have been accomplished without Vida Becker, with Ann Castle, Anna Oleja, Jaime Garcia, Chelsea Colwin, all of them really contributed, and working with them was my honor. So yeah, thank you so much. I encourage others, if this is a field you're interested in doing, much work is still there to be done. We can use the assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, and congratulations. We also have two recipients of the Environment, Energy, and Resources Dedication to Diversity and Justice Award, which recognizes and honors the accomplishments of a person, entity, or organization that has made significant accomplishments or demonstrated recognized leadership in the areas of environmental justice or commitment to gender, racial, and ethnic diversity in the environment, energy, and natural resources legal area. The first recipient is Rebecca Bratspies, and the award is being presented by Carmen Gonzalez. Carmen is a professor of law at Loyola University Chicago School of Law and an expert in international environmental law, environmental justice, human rights in the environment, and food security.
It is truly a delight to present this award to my colleague and friend, Rebecca Bratspies. Professor Bratspies is a law professor at City University of New York School of Law. She is the founding director of the Center for Urban Environmental Reform at CUNY Law School. She is an internationally recognized expert on environmental justice and on the human right to a healthy environment. Professor Bratspies has written scores of law review articles, op-eds, and other publications, including 4 books. Her most recent book, Environmental Justice, Law, Policy, and Regulation, is used in law schools across the country as the leading textbook on environmental justice. Professor Bratspies is a prolific scholar, a highly regarded teacher, and a much sought after speaker. She serves as an appointed member of New York City's Environmental Justice Advisory Panel and the EPA's Children's Health Protection Advisory Committee. Professor Bratspies also serves as a scholar with the Center for Progressive Reform, as a core member of the Global Network for the Study of Human Rights and the Environment, and on the editorial board of the International Journal of Law and Context. She is a graduate of Wesleyan University and holds a law degree from University of Pennsylvania. In short, she is a scholar activist who is one of the country's leading experts on environmental justice law and policy. But I want to highlight 3 aspects of her work that many people don't know about to illustrate the breadth of her accomplishments. First, Professor Bratspies has teamed up with an artist to produce 2 environmentally themed comic books, Maya's Lot and Bina's Planet. These comic books bring environmental literacy to a new generation of environmental justice leaders. She has also worked with youth leaders in New York City to bring environmental justice to the public schools through teacher training and workshops built around her comic books. All over the world, including the United States, young people are at the forefront of movements that are demanding environmental and climate justice. They're protesting, they're organizing, they're suing to force governments to take action on polluting facilities and climate change. Professor Bratspies is a pioneer in the use of unconventional methods to help develop the next generation of environmental justice leaders, in addition to the work that she does in the classroom to train the next generation of environmental justice lawyers. Second, through her service to the City of New York, Professor Bratspies helped the New York City Council develop legislation to shut down the notorious Rikers Island jail complex. This is an important step in terms of ending mass incarceration that disproportionately impacts Black and Brown communities. But it's also an environmental justice victory. In addition to shutting down the jail, the plan is to transform the island into a model of green infrastructure and jobs designed to benefit the communities directly impacted by mass incarceration. By generating green energy on Rikers and providing wastewater treatment and organic waste processing, this will make it possible to shut down aging power plants and inefficient wastewater treatment facilities that are currently burdening environmental justice communities in New York. Third, Professor Bratspies is a community builder who works collaboratively with colleagues, with students, and with community members to promote environmental justice. Academia is filled with people who don't play well with others and who single-mindedly pursue their own professional advancement. Professor Bratspies completely breaks this model. She builds communities and she leaves every group, every institution, every individual she touches better than before she came on the scene. So it's just an honor and a pleasure to present the Dedication to Diversity and Justice Award to Professor Bratspies.
Thank you, Carmen. I'm overwhelmed by those kind words. And thank you, ABA SEER, for this great honor. I'm speaking to you today from traditional Lenape lands here in New York City, and I want to begin by acknowledging their custody and care of this land. I am quite frankly humbled to be with all of you today, and particularly to be on the same virtual stage with this incredible slate of honorees. But as we meet here today, we're on the brink of environmental catastrophe. We're facing a climate crisis, a biodiversity crisis, and a pollution health crisis that's an environmental justice crisis. We need new tools, new ways of thinking about and doing environmental law. I started the Center for Urban Environmental Reform with two goals related to addressing these crises. First, to help build a new generation of environmental leaders focused on the urban environment. And second, to help overburdened communities participate more effectively in environmental decisions that affected them. The first goal has been successful beyond my wildest dreams. The Environmental Justice Chronicles, a series of comic books I produced with artist Charlie LaGreca and with New York City public school students, has been used in classrooms across the country. Students learn alongside the comic book's characters as they organize their community to advocate for access to green space, for air quality, and for transformational environmental change. In New York City, we use these books as the basis of interdisciplinary teacher training workshops that bring environmental justice into science class, history, ELA, and art. Young people identify their own environmental justice villains, it's a comic book after all, and then create campaigns for change. It has been inspiring and humbling to see just how much passion these young leaders bring to the quest for environmental justice and to witness the power of their vision for transformative change. Working to achieve the second goal, quite frankly, changed my vision of the law. It's an ugly fact that most of the pollution that overburdened communities experience is sanctioned by law. It's also an ugly fact that those overburdened communities are mostly Black and Brown communities. Decades of legal segregation set the stage for an environmental apartheid that channels polluting infrastructure and industry into already overburdened minority communities. In a country that has for decades had a law setting air quality standards at a level requisite to protect human health with an adequate margin for safety, it is inexcusable that far too many children still breathe air that makes them sick. And again, the overwhelming majority are Black and Brown children. This is true here in New York, where the asthma rates in some Bronx neighborhoods is 10 times higher than in wealthier, whiter neighborhoods. It's true in Louisiana, where EPA Administrator Regan has recently been meeting with affected communities, and it's true where all of you live as well. It is our great shame that most of the decisions driving these environmental inequities are sanctioned by law. Legal should have some relationship to just, to fair, to equal. When it doesn't, it's our job, the job of lawyers, to change that. Overburdened communities across New York City, across the country and around the world are advocating within an unfair, unjust, unequal legal system. And simultaneously, they are building support to change those legal systems for the better. These communities can and do speak for themselves. They don't need us to speak for them, but they do need our support. They need us to work with them, alongside them. And as lawyers, we make a choice every day. Whether we acknowledge it or not, we either choose to work for justice or against it. Every time we look away or justify unfair, unequal allocations of pollution as somehow efficient or inevitable, we are complicit in perpetuating environmental injustice. In particular, those of us privileged to work in universities have an obligation to serve and support communities in their quest for environmental justice. And I am both honored and humbled to receive this award as an endorsement of that principle, which is really how I view it. The true honors belong to the young people and the community leaders that I have worked with over the years, and it has been my great honor to work alongside. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Charles Lee is the other recipient of the Dedication to Diversity and Justice Award, and his award will be presented by Vernice Miller-Travis. Vernice is Executive Vice President for Environment and Sustainability at the Metropolitan Group and is a thought leader on environmental justice and the interplay of civil rights and environmental policy.
Thank you. Good evening to the SEER section of the American Bar Association. Tonight, I want to say a few words about my mentor, Charles Lee, who is a visionary leader and strategist of the environmental justice movement. The definition of visionary is someone or something that thinks about the future or advancements in a creative and imaginative way. A person who is ahead of their time and who has a powerful plan for change in the future is an example of a visionary. One example of that is the introduction that Charles wrote to the proceedings, the First National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit. Charles wrote, "The First National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit was the defining event of the emerging movement for environmental justice. As the summit's call for action stated, unlike traditional mainstream environmental and social justice organizations, this multiracial, multicultural movement of people of color is evolving from the bottom up and not from the top down. It seeks a global vision based on grassroots realities. The summit demanded a restructuring of the relationship between communities of color and government policymakers, the polluting industry, traditional environmental organizations, and the philanthropic community, which supports environmental protection, research, and action. The summit put to rest forever any notion that people of color were not already providing significant leadership on environmental issues." A visionary is also a person with original ideas about what the future will or could be like. This is a visionary keen on policymaking. Visionary leaders turn vision into reality, especially a person thinking about planning the future with imagination or wisdom. A visionary leader, someone who is inspired, imaginative, and creative. In 1996, while he chaired the Waste and Facility Siting Subcommittee of the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council to the EPA, we published a report. I served on that subcommittee at Charles's request, and we published a report, Environmental Justice, Urban Revitalization, and Brownfields, the Search for Authentic Signs of Hope. Charles was the principal author of that report, and he wrote this: "The vision of environmental justice is the development of a holistic, bottom-up, community-based, multi-issue, cross-cutting, and integrative and unifying paradigm for achieving healthy and sustainable communities, both urban and rural. In the context of ecological peril, economic dysfunction, infrastructure decay, racial polarization, social turmoil, cultural disorientation, and spiritual malaise, which grips urban America at the end of the 20th century, and I would say certainly here in the 21st century. Environmental justice is indeed a much needed breath of fresh air. Tragically, many positive developments have been rendered invisible behind the curtain of a sensationalist-oriented mass media. However, there is no denying that great resilience exists in the economic, cultural, and spiritual life of America's communities. There are many stellar accomplishments, entrepreneurial successes, and significant victories, both big and small. Hence, an abiding goal of the public dialogues on urban revitalization in brownfields was the constant search for authentic signs of hope. A visionary leader ensures the vision becomes reality by stating clear goals, outlining a strategic plan for achieving those goals, and equipping and empowering each member to take action on the plan and the organizing team at individual levels. It's not every day that we get to be in the presence of a true visionary, but Charles Lee has earned that moniker with his more than 35 years of work to help build what we know today as the environmental justice movement and the field of environmental justice. On behalf of the ABA section of Environment, Energy, and Resources, it is my honor and pleasure to present my mentor, Charles Lee, with the Dedication to Diversity and Justice Award. This award is so richly deserved for your lifetime of contributions to launching and sustaining the field of environmental justice. Congratulations, Charles.
Thank you, Bernice, for that gracious and generous introduction. And thank you to the American Bar Association section on Energy, Environment, and Resources for giving me this incredible and humbling honor. It is really moving to be recognized in this way. I started to work on issues of environmental justice some 40 years ago, before these issues even had a name. Today, environmental justice is at the pinnacle of the nation's policy agenda. And by that, I don't only mean that environmental justice is a central part of the Biden-Harris administration, but work on environmental justice, as we can see, is resonating throughout thousands of communities, hundreds of universities, and at all levels of government. Indeed, we are reminded of Dr. Martin Luther King's statement about the arc of the moral universe being long but bending towards justice. Environmental justice is an example of the essential truth of that statement. I remember some 40 years ago being moved by the idea of how the confluence of race, poverty, and environment could become a vehicle for truly transformative societal change. That was a time, however, when people questioned the very idea that environmental burdens and benefits could be distributed inequitably along lines of race and income. Today, however, there are thousands of peer-reviewed journal articles that provide evidence of the systemic nature of this problem. And we are just beginning to understand that it is in fact that the spatial distribution or the spatial organization of environmental benefits and burdens is an important lens by which we can build truly just, sustainable, and resilient communities. Of course, this meant a radically different conception of what the environment and environmentalism is. The environmental justice movement redefined the environment as a place where we live, work, play, pray, and learn. It put forward the idea that people from impacted communities must speak for themselves. These important concepts have driven the growth and maturation of environmental justice and must continue to do so. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge all the people who have been part of this incredible journey. People like Richard Moore, Bob Bullard, Peggy Shepard, Tom Goldtooth, Susanna Almanza, Bernice Miller-Travis, and indeed many persons on this committee. We need to pay tribute to the memories of many who have passed, like Dana Austin, Damu Smith, and Hazel Johnson. We need to lift up the new generation of environmental justice leaders, persons like Angela Logan, Jerome Foster, and Latricia Adams. There are, however, so many more, names of whom we will never know, who have labored in anonymity within communities, sacrificing much, but whose efforts are the heart and soul of what it means to fight for environmental justice. I want to end by talking about Dr. King's words from the perspective of former President Barack Obama. President Obama was himself an environmental justice organizer in Oakdale Gardens, the Black housing project in the industrial south side of Chicago that was surrounded by toxic facilities and built on top of a landfill. President Obama said that each of us has a role in bending that arc of history. Today, the issues of environmental justice are ever so much more important in the midst of both the opportunities and challenges presented by the host of issues involving pollution, energy, and the climate crisis. Indeed, the opportunity for each and every one of you to make a difference in bending that arc of history towards environmental justice and a more just and sustainable and resilient society for all has never been greater. Thank you so much.
Thank you and congratulations. The next award is for the Environment, Energy, and Resources Government Attorney Award, Government Attorney of the Year Award, which recognizes exceptional achievement by federal, state, tribal, or local government attorneys who have worked or are working in the field of environment, energy, or natural resources, and are esteemed by their peers and viewed as having consistently achieved distinction in an exemplary way. This year, the award is being given to Judge Harvey Sweitzer and will be accepted on his behalf by Carl Johnson. It's being presented by Alex Dunn. Alex is a partner at Baker Botts and previously served as the Assistant Administrator for the US EPA's Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention. Alex is past ABA SEER Chair and a current member of the ABA SEER Awards Committee.
Thank you so much, Shoshana, and I am so honored to be a part of today's presentation of the ABA Section of Environment, Energy, and Resources Government Attorney of the Year Award to the Honorable Judge Harvey C. Sweitzer. Judge Sweitzer is the longest serving Department of the Interior employee on record, according to his Career Achievement Award letter, which was provided to him this very July 2021 by Secretary Deb Haaland. In Judge Schweitzer's nomination letter, our very good colleague, Kathleen Marion Carr, stated, quote, "No other public servant in the history of the Department of the Interior has had as much long-lasting impact on Department of Interior programs as he." Judge Schweitzer, and you will hear so much more about him from Carl in a moment, served 48 years as an administrative law judge, overseeing hundreds of hearings and thousands of cases. He served under 20 secretaries of the Interior and even more acting secretaries. So it is my great honor and privilege to introduce to all of you Carl Johnson. Carl is a senior attorney at the Department of the Interior, and he worked for and with Judge Sweitzer right up to his retirement for 30 years. The judge asked Carl to accept on his behalf. And so, Carl, we are so honored to have you with us to hear more about Judge Sweitzer and the wonderful impact he made on environmental and natural resources law. Carl.
Thank you. It's an honor to accept the award on Judge Schweitzer's behalf. As you said, I've worked with Judge Sweitzer at the Department of Interior's Hearings Division for 30 years. And our office was much like a family under his excellent leadership. And that's really just a priceless gift for which we were all eternally grateful. So thank you, Harvey. Sorry, I'm emotional. Consequently, while we had 16 secretaries come and go during his 48-year tenure, we had numerous employees in our small 10-person office stay 25 years or more under his leadership. It was really an indication of the measure of the man. Before we became an ALJ, he worked for 15 years for the department solicitor's office. And as you said, making him the longest serving interior employee on record. And for these accomplishments, Harvey received the Secretary's Certificate of Career Excellence. Whenever an Interior Secretary needed a judge for a major hearing, they appointed Judge Sweitzer. I enjoyed the privilege of observing Judge Sweitzer in action, presiding over several of those hearings. One was the Northern Spotted Owl hearing, which pertained to a 1991 BLM proposal to conduct timber harvesting in the habitat for the Northern Spotted Owl, which is a threatened species. And Judge Sweitzer presided over the development of a hearing record for the Interior Secretary and other members of the Endangered Species Committee, who would then determine whether to grant BLM an application for an exemption under the Endangered Species Act. It received national recognition, and he even had to travel under an assumed name to go to the hearing. Judge Sweitzer was also assigned to carry out a federal court-ordered settlement by conducting a hearing and issuing a final decision for the department regarding numerous livestock grazing decisions involving was hundreds of thousands of acres of habitat for the threatened desert tortoise. During these hearings, Judge Sweitzer consistently displayed all the traits that an ideal judge should have. He showed patience and courtesy and humility, just like he did at the office. He exercised forbearance under provocation, dealing with others with sensitivity and without giving offense. When required, he was firm but tactful, relying on healthy doses of common sense. I actually served myself as a small claims court judge, and I was just amazed at how he always just kept his cool and treated people respectfully. It was amazing. And his consistency in maintaining these traits over 5 decades is one of the greatest contributions to the environment, energy, and resource fields. Our work does not necessarily offer many opportunities to shape law and resource stewardship practices, as we're constrained by the law at the time and the formulations of the issues by the parties. However, on at least one occasion, Judge Sweitzer was thought to have been the shepherd of a major new development. During the desert tortoise hearing, a police station next door provided judges' chambers. As the tall, gray-bearded Judge Sweitzer walked through the police station lobby in a judicial robe, a 5-year-old asked his mommy, "Is that Moses?" So I'd like to close by thanking all of you for your contributions to the environment, energy, and resources field. Many organizations and advocates appearing before our office work tirelessly without adequate resources often, and they make these contributions. So I thank you all for your good work and the prestigious award you bestowed on Judge Sweitzer. Thanks.
Thank you, Carl. The next 2 awards are being given for programming. And before I dive into them, I just want to note that across the board, it was really wonderful to see how professional organizations, law schools, and others not only adapted to the virtual environment, but really took advantage of it. And so the first of these awards is the Law Student Environment, Energy, and Resources Program of the Year Award, which is given in recognition of the best student organized educational programming or public service project of the year, focusing on issues in the field of environmental, energy, or natural resources law. This year, the University of Maine School of Law is receiving the award for its program entitled Environmental and Climate Justice, Anti-Racist Movements and Principles for Practice. Presenting the award is Seth Davis. Seth served as chair of ABA SEER from 2016 to 2017 and currently serves as a member of the ABA SEER Awards Committee.
Thank you, Shoshana, and hello, everyone. I always enjoy getting to present this particular award because we love to honor and appreciate the work done by student groups in setting up great environmental programs. This year in particular, we honor a program that really hit our 2 main issues at SEER. environmental justice, and climate change, subjects of the last two resolutions that we were able to successfully get the American Bar Association to adopt. This program, student-run, entitled Environmental and Climate Justice, Anti-Racist Movements and Principles for Practice, combine those two disciplines. They explored the birth and history of the environmental justice movement, its implications for climate policy, the incorporation of environmental and climate justice principles in the practice of law and policy creation, and our mutual professional and ethical obligation to identify and fight against environmental racism. We're happy to endorse that work and happy to recognize today two recipients. First, Professor Jeff Thaler and Edward Teddy Simpson, one of the students who helped organize the program, here to accept the award. Thank you in particular for doing this under the trying circumstances of COVID, and thank you for your interest in your work.
Thank you, Seth. On behalf of the University of Maine School of Law and our Energy and Environmental Law Society's former chairs, Josh Rosen and Allison Briggs, thank you to the American Bar Association for this honor and for including us in this wonderful event. You all are incredibly inspiring, and there is much work to do, so I will be brief. I am the current student co-chair of the Energy and Environmental Law Society at Maine Law, affectionately EELS. And our organization is committed to engaging with the most relevant energy, environmental, and climate issues facing the legal community in Maine and across the country, and to framing those issues through environmental justice, not just through this program, but always. I will pass it over to Professor Jeff Thaler now for more information about the program that was put together last fall. Thanks.
Thank you, Teddy, and thank you, Seth, and thank you, everybody, for this award and your kind words. First, I have to say that when we started thinking about the program, we never in a million years thought about any kind of national recognition, and it was both a shock and a thrill to get the letter from Kevin Gordon from the ABA about the award. And then even more surprising to me and to us was to then get the plaque in the mail, which I'll just hold here for a moment, which is quite heavy, so I'm going to set it down. But you know, we are about the smallest law school in the United States, the only public law school, the only law school in Maine. Sorry, I have my cat getting in my lap here, which is a common thing with Zoom over the last 20 months. And I wanted to sort of echo Shoshana's comment about adapting to the pandemic, because when Josh Rosen, who was the president of EELS, and I sat down to say, what are we going to do for programming this year? We talked about various things, and we don't have travel budgets. We can't pay for faculty to come do speeches to our events. But one thing we realized, and I said, is, go big or go home. We have Zoom. Let's see if we can get some well-known people in the field that the students wanted to talk about and to hear about, to be willing to do this, and we did. And so we had 4 panelists. From Hawaii was Maxine Burkett, who's now one of the members of the Biden administration, expert on climate justice. We had Gerald Torres, who was a law school classmate of mine, housemate of mine, so I was able to twist his arm a little bit, from Yale. And Gerald was involved in the original executive order relating to environmental justice. So we envision this as trying to give sort of an overview, but both origins, but then moving it also to today, and to how students and the next generation could really take on the tasks and the mission that many of you have already talked about, Rebecca and others and Heather during this event, because that's why we're all in this, right? We're thinking about climate and environmental justice, not just for what the effects are today, but on the next generation, our children, our grandchildren, and our students like Teddy and his peers. And so we also had Marion Engelman Lotto, who was then at Vermont Law School, now also in the Biden administration, who had been running the Environmental Justice Clinic at Vermont Law School. And then Dr. Daniel Faber from Boston, who has also worked on environmental justice issues on the ground in the Boston area. So ultimately, what helped make the program successful, we, beyond the fact that Josh and Allison were marketing machines, is that we had over 500 participants. We would never have had that had we not had Zoom. We had people literally from all over the world who attended the event, and we were able to record it, of course. But ultimately, again, it's really humbling to see and hear the people on this, I'll call it call, but in this conference, and I'm sorry that we could not be in Washington, or for Teddy to have that experience, and Josh and others to meet people like yourselves, because there are so many leaders, not only those who are receiving the awards tonight, those of you who are presenting, and those of you who are watching and participating. Many of you I know through the American College of Environmental Lawyers, and it's really our task, our burden, to encourage and inspire the young lawyers, the young professors, the young activists to carry this on, because we all know since Glasgow and COP26 that the work is not done, and there's a long way to go, and that both issues of environmental justice and climate justice and environmental racism unfortunately have not gone away and will be with us for a long time, hopefully not too long. So with that, I'll end and just say again, on behalf of the University of Maine School of Law, and particularly on behalf of my favorite acronym, EELS, when we formed that, we were very deliberate about it some years ago. And both its past officers and its current, they just did a very successful career panel event last night. Teddy and Shannon Linehan is co-chair, which again was both live and on Zoom. So we're adapting. But again, thank you very much for this honor, and we really appreciate it, and look forward to future events like this that we can all participate in. Thank you again, Seth, and everybody else.
Thank you, and congratulations. And Teddy, we look forward to you joining us after graduation and becoming a full-fledged member of our section and of the bar. The State or Local Environment, Energy, and Resources Program of the Year Award is given in recognition of the best CLE program or public service project of the year, focused on issues in the field of environmental, energy, or natural resources law. This year, the award is being given by Jonathan Wabarocha to the Environmental Law Committee of New York City Bar Association for its program series titled Building Power in the Environmental Movement. Jonathan is counsel for environment, health, safety, and sustainability at Xerox, and serves as ABA SEER's membership and diversity officer.
And I would be remiss, Shoshana, for not thanking you for that plug for any law student for membership within SEER after they graduate. Thank you for the introduction, Shoshana. I want to first just congratulate the Bar Association of New York City for a phenomenal, really series of programs. The series of programs are called Building Power in the Environmental Movement. And inherent is that, in that is that it acknowledged that in order to build power within the environmental movement, it's going to take a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. At a time when organizations were wondering how they can be more inclusive, more equitable, the series of programs really provided opportunities for BIPOC attorneys from NGOs and law firms to not only share their experiences, but also discuss concrete examples of how environmental organizations and legislation can better integrate concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And specifically for organizations that talked about mentorship and things like that. It was a great series that provided practical practical experiences, practical advice. And I'm not just saying that because I was a panelist for one of the events. It was timely and it discussed really an important topic, a very important topic, which I think you've heard kind of echoed throughout many of the speakers tonight. And it really also provided a great example of collaboration. You had individuals from NYU Law School, the State Bar, the New York City Bar Association, SEER, and organizations such as Green 2.0, all pooling their skills and resources together to really put on the series of events and programs. I really hope to see more collaboration amongst organizations and SEER that really talk about the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion within the environmental legal field. I'll also make a plug that this series continues. Anyone working on these concepts of equity and inclusion and justice, know that the moment you think you're done, it means you're not done. And the series is going to continue. There was a program earlier this month focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion and anti-racism for environmental jobs in the government. And so while they're receiving an award for what happened last year, the series, the programs are going to continue, and they're going to continue the conversation, which I'm really proud of and really happy to see. I'd like to present this award to Bethany Davis-Knoll, Executive Director at the State Energy and Environmental Impact Center at NYU School of Law, and Margaret Berry, an environmental law writer from Arnold and Porter. That is all I'm going to say tonight, and I really invite Bethany and Margaret to impart some wisdom on us this evening.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, that your participation in this work that we've been doing has been so inspiring. I'm so grateful to you and to the section, for what you've given us here, which is an opportunity to talk more about this project and plug the work of these, that we did with these events, and also that your committee and our committee are doing. So this series that Jonathan just told you all about, it was about something. It was about a problem the environmental law community is facing. The field, the environmental law field has been slower to diversify than the larger environmental movement. And we wanted to explore why that was the case and what we could do about it. So the Environmental Law Committee, in partnership with Green 2.0, began a series of conversations for how to address that. And one thing that became clear is that folks might be interested in this profession, but they want to know what firms and NGOs are actually doing on the front of diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of firms talk about it, but what are they really doing? What's going on behind the scenes to actually address it? And not only that, but is it working? What's it doing to change things, to change what the work looks like, and to change the practice itself? And Green 2.0 has been doing really important work in this area. It's a watchdog for inequality in the environmental sector. And I'm going to read their mission statement. People of color are the most impacted by environmental problems and the least represented in positions of power. And in the 21st century, the success of environmental causes will be based on our ability to transform them into more just, inclusive, and relevant organizations and movements. And that really hits home with me. Accountability is an important piece of that, and Green 2.0's work is crucial to that. What it's helping do is answer this question: what progress is being made? So Green 2.0 has a report card that they put out every year, which comes out every year with data on the diversity in staff at nonprofit organizations and in grant making from foundations. And they just released the latest report yesterday. And I'll put the link in the chat in a second. You all should look at it. It's really striking and very, very interesting. And that's what I'm talking about, is accountability. If your numbers are being tracked from year to year, then it's more likely that you as an organization will respond. And I think that's what Green 2.0 is doing for this profession. So what we did with this series was break this all down. We started with Green 2.0's report, the one that came out at the beginning of the year, and had a conversation about what specific work was happening at firms and at NGOs. We had DEI professionals from those sectors come and talk about that. Then we had a panel that was designed to answer another question. Can you, as a lawyer of color, see yourself in this profession? And attorneys like Jonathan came and shared the challenges they faced and the advice they received along the way, the recommendations they have for new attorneys interested in exploring a career in environmental law. And then we finally had a panel addressing the question of whether this work can really be transformative. Is this work that you want to do? And in the spring, what we did for that was we had a case study about the equity provisions in New York State's new climate statute and how those were being implemented. And this fall, the panel that Jonathan just told you about was another panel where government attorneys answered that same question. Is it a transformative job to go into government? And we had the AG, Washington, D.C. AG, Racine, come and talk about that. It's super inspiring. And, even as like a lawyer who's been in the profession for a long time, I felt encouraged and inspired. So Margaret Berry and I, as co-chairs of the Environmental Law Committee, are accepting this award, but it's on behalf of all the great folks that we've partnered with on this work. Members of our committee, like Nikki Adame Winningham, who put us in touch with Jonathan and Marissa Blackshire, who were on the panel, Andres Jimenez and Adrian Alicea at Green 2.0, my center at NYU, the State Energy and Environmental Impact Center, and my prior center, the Institute for Policy Integrity, and also NYU's Center for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging here at the law school, which has been really a great support to me at my center as I took over the reins. And then the Stevens Center for Climate Change Law at Columbia Law School. We thanked all of you for your participation and support in this project. As Jonathan said, it really was a fruit of all these people coming together and working on this together. And I'm really grateful to have been part of that. And I hope you'll all read the report that Green 2.0 put out and also watch these recordings and see what Jonathan and Marissa had to say. Thank you so much for this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bethany. So our final award tonight is the ABA Lifetime Achievement Award in Environmental Energy or Resources, Law, and Policy. And it recognizes and celebrates the accomplishments of major practitioners in environmental energy or resources, law, and policy in the United States. Our recipient this year is Jeffrey Miller, who has also achieved the status of having two presenters, Steve Maiano and Sean Dixon. Steve is a shareholder at Hangley, Aronchek, Siegel, Pudlin, and Schiller, no relationship, in Philadelphia, and is a past chair of ABA SEER. Sean is soundkeeper and executive director at Puget Soundkeeper in Seattle, and a member of the ABA SEER's Awards Committee, and was my co-chair last year when when Jeff was selected. So Jeff and Steve, take it. I'm sorry, Sean and Steve, take it away. It's getting long. I apologize.
Thank you, and we'll be quick here. And I think that's going to be hard to do for Steve and I because of all the amazing things that Jeff's done. So I'll start by saying I first met Jeff Miller, who has varyingly gone by Dean Miller, Professor Miller over the years that I've known him. In my first day in law school, I was a fresh out of the science profession, young advocate that wanted to become a lawyer, had no idea what law school was about. And I walk into a torts class, and in walks Santa Claus drinking what I can assume is hot cocoa in a coffee mug, Jeffrey Miller. But unlike the Santa Claus of myth, with a twinkle of his eye or a raised eyebrow, he would strike terror in the heart of every one of his students in any of the first year courses that he taught. He would say, well, and you would just immediately distrust whatever you proposed in that class. 3 or 4 classes into my law school career was the first time that thing came true that you read about in law school, where Professor Miller asked a question and 3 people in a row hadn't done the reading, and he just left, just walked right out of the lecture, never to come back. I had no idea what to expect in law school after that. But Dean Miller, Jeff Miller, and I got to know one another well. My lack of correct answers endeared me, I believe, in his heart. And so eventually I started learning and picking up a little bit more of his wisdom. Dean Miller was a core and central piece of Pace Law School's environmental program for years, wrote many, many books on the subject, has an illustrious academic career. A lot of y'all on the phone or on the Zoom know this. We actually came across a citizen suit case just a month or so ago that was quoting extensively from the citizen suit reports and books that Jeff Miller has published. So long-lasting, impactful work for the profession in academia. And Steve will be presenting and talking a little bit more about the other 2/3 of his work before academia. But I really do want to thank Jeff Miller for his leadership in practice-driven education, really taking environmental law translating it for students and turning it into something real. This was never, more crystal clear than if you look at the moot court at Pace Law School that was named after him. I think in 2014, for 30 years, Jeff Miller wrote the problem, shepherded the problem, moved the moot court program through the process, helped guide all the students that were running it at Pace Law School, myself included, and really was, the creativity and the foundational wisdom behind that moot court, along with several other professors at Pace, that shaped the legal professions of hundreds of students from around the country, from 70 law schools from around the country every year, really building a base for the next generation of environmental lawyers. A lot of us here went to that report. You all got to see the wisdom, the creativity, and the lunacy, some might say, of the brain of Jeff Miller in creating some of those problems. Really phenomenal impact on our profession just in that one program alone. Jeff Miller, mentor, great guidance for me in my career, generous human, all of the great qualities that were not at all evidenced on my first day of my 1L year in torts, but I came to learn over the years of being a friend of his. And I will say to the folks in Maine, I won't give away too much personal protective information here about where Jeff lives, but you've got a whole law school in one person there, Jeff Miller, in case you ever need somebody to come and speak at your next panel in person in Maine. Phenomenal human being, phenomenal leader, wonderful mentor of mine. And I could not have been where I am today without learning everything I did about the Clean Water Act, administrative law. I learned nothing about torts, but I don't do that right now. So I guess that's, no harm, no foul. But I'm happy to have known Jeff over the years, and I'm happy to continue to know him. His 30 years at Pace Law School were shockingly just about a third of his lifetime achievement. And so for the other 2/3, I'll turn over to Steve Miano in Philadelphia.
Good evening, everybody. I'm really deeply honored to help present the Lifetime Achievement Award to someone I've looked up to and admired for over 30 years, and whom I consider to be a dear friend. Sean talked about his sort of law school experiences. Jeff also was an assistant administrator at EPA. He had a whole EPA career. But before that, Jeff was a partner, senior partner in a very large firm. And I want to talk just a little bit about that. I want to tell you a story about Jeff that for me illustrates far more. He's laughing. He knows the story. It illustrates far more about Jeff than what he simply accomplished, which is a lot. It's a story that illustrates the type of person Jeff is really deep down. Some of you may have heard this story before. I tell it as part of a lecture I give to the section's leadership development program on dealing with bullies and jerks. Now, before you jump to the wrong conclusion, I tell this story at the end of my lecture. And I use it to teach a lesson that Jeff taught me about how to be neither a bully nor a jerk. It's a story that I've really carried with me for 30 plus years. So right after law school, my first job was at EPA Region 3. I was a Superfund lawyer. And my first big case was called the Butler Tunnel site. Superfund site in Pennsylvania, and I'll spare you the details, but essentially it involved the disposal of millions of gallons of hazardous waste into a mine borehole in Pennsylvania by a bunch of haulers. And those haulers dumped waste from some of the biggest companies in the country. So there I was, right out of law school, negotiating with some of the most experienced environmental lawyers in the country, representing some of the biggest companies in the country. The negotiation was intense, it was long, and it eventually reached a settlement that was memorialized into an administrative consent order, just in time for the end of EPA's fiscal year. Jeff, who was then a senior partner in the law firm, was one of the lead negotiators for the companies. And after the negotiations were over, he sent me 40 original signature pages from these very large companies around the country. And they arrived by courier just about a week before the end of the fiscal year. Those were the days before you could email e-signatures for documents. They had to be actual signatures that were delivered to you. So satisfied that I had been wildly successful in my first foray in negotiating with a bunch of companies, I put the signatures on my chair and I left for the night. I came in the next morning and to my horror, they were gone. They were nowhere to be found. And I enlisted the entire regional counsel's office, which back then was 21 lawyers, to scour the building. I interviewed the housekeeping staff. I dove in the dumpster. I looked for these signature pages everywhere I could. To no avail, they were nowhere to be found. This turn of events led me to have to call Jeff Miller and tell him that the signatures were gone. He had collected these signatures from vice presidents from the biggest companies in the country, and I had to tell him they were lost and that I needed new copies in a week to meet EPA's end of fiscal year, which back then, and I think still is pejoratively but accurately called bean counting. So fully prepared for this high-powered partner in a big law firm to call me many uncomplimentary things over the phone, I called Jeff and I nervously explained the situation. At the end of the explanation, rather than what I expected, there was dead silence. And what seemed to me like 20 minutes, but I'm sure it was just a minute or so. At the end, when the silence had passed, there was laughter at the other end of the phone. And after he laughed, he simply and calmly said, "Things happen, I'll do my best." And well, as you would expect with Jeff, for those of you who know him, he got me the signature pages, the new signature pages from all those vice presidents, and sent them to me in time. And to me, this story illustrates the kind of person Jeff really is. He frankly had every right to yell and scream at me over the phone and make me feel like an abject failure. Instead, he was professional, he was courteous, and he was kind. And this is illustrative of the Jeff Miller I've come to know and respect for the past 30 years. And it's a part of the reason why I think he's so deserving of this Lifetime Achievement honor. So Jeff, with that, my friend, I leave you to accept this well-deserved honor.
Well, thank you very much, Steve and Sean. And the ABA committee and the ABA section, everybody in the ABA for this. I mean, it is kind of a celebration of my career, and it's both an honor and a privilege to be told by your colleagues over the decades that you've done a good job, and you can't really ask for any more than that in your professional career. So it's very meaningful to me, and to be remembered as somebody who can laugh and use laughter as a positive part of a relationship, I think is important. I hope that Sean remembers that there was a lot of laughter in that class because I tried to poke fun at myself as well as others, and breaking the ice in law school classes really helps to get through the people as well. And I think that kindness is an important attribute of a professional. And I am glad to remember it, at least by some, for that. I what Steve doesn't know is that the really difficult conversations were between me and the lawyers of the other companies. And almost invariably, I got over that by making them laugh. And what you left out, of course, was as a young believer in EPA, you had said to us for months that we had to have this done by such a date, and that meant getting all the signatures by such a date, or the world is going to cave in, we're going to send this off to the Justice Department, so on. And then, of course, when you screwed it up, well, you didn't screw it up, but when you lost it, that gave the other guys something to laugh at. And after that, it was really no big problem, except for the tracking down the people who could sign new pages. But yeah, it's one of my favorite stories, and I hope that it epitomizes the way I conducted myself as a professional. One of the things that I got out of the award ceremony here was you always wonder what's coming next. I mean, we've solved some problems, but we've discovered way more than we've solved, and we've brought on some new ones. Well, it's very it's very good to hear what some of our younger colleagues are doing, and what broad fields that they are moving into from our core, and how much energy they have to do good, and it's a great thing to know. You can have the best career in the world, and it's over at some point, and unless it's carried on by young people, it's as if you hadn't really done anything. Well, that's not true here. I mean, in the environmental law area, there are just lots of people standing back and continuing to do things and move forward and solve problems. And so I wish you all the best of careers and the best of luck doing good. And remember to laugh. It's really needed. Oh, yes, there is this. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Miller. Well, as you can see, I really wasn't exaggerating when I talked about the fact that our awardees this year are really a remarkable group. And I encourage you to get to know them better, and to congratulate them yourselves as we open up our breakout rooms